Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, or it could be whiskey with an analyst reading a spreadsheet, linking crime events, identifying a series, and getting the latest scoop on association news and training. So please don't beat that analyst and join us as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
How we doing, analyst? Jason Elder here with a special LEA podcast deep dive. This is an episode dedicated to the IACA, who is currently asking for innovative ideas. What we're going to do with this episode is talk about the innovative ideas that were motioned by the membership, go into the logistics of each motion, and talk about how IACA folks vote. So this is going to be a very IACA-centric episode, but this is a new process. We wanted to put a spotlight on this process, get as many membership eyes on this process, given that this is the first time the IACA has ever done this, and hopefully this is the beginning of more types of these online motions to come. So, with all that being said, with that introduction, my panel today is Mindy Duong, Noah Fritz, and Deb Piehl. And Deb Piehl has gotten stuck on a plane, so she is going to be late. So we are going to check back with her later. But Mindy, Noah, how we doing?
I'm great. I'm doing really good, Jason. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm excited about having this conversation.
And I'm always happy to be here. So
all right. Thank you both. So the way, just to set the table a little bit more, we're going to go through the announcement for these innovative ideas, and then we're going to go through the 9 motions that were submitted. So to start from the top, the IACA board put in a forum on the IACA website asking for innovative ideas, wanting to hear from the membership. They said a recent IACA member had asked the board how to make and debate motions in between the annual meeting. It's specified in the bylaws about putting in motions, and some may even thought that it could only be done at annual meetings, but this is their way of trying to do it outside of the annual meeting. So there was a 2-week period from May 1st to May 14th where all members had an opportunity to submit a motion. They were looking for ones that were very specific, actionable, justifiable, and consistent with the association's bylaws. And then starting Monday, May 19th till the following Monday, May 26th, is the voting period. And so these 9 motions are going on a ballot. The members will have a week to vote. For the motion to move forward, at least 10% of the membership, or 735, must vote in favor of the motion. So with all that being said, I want to start with Noah, because you were the unnamed member who was recently asking the board about how to make and debate motions in between the annual meetings. So I wanted to start with you, Noah.
Fair enough. I will openly admit in a public forum that I am that person that kind of challenges the board to allow a couple motions that I've made now multiple times. I applaud them for at least looking for a way to start the conversation and begin to do things. But my first motion or innovative idea that I put forward, in all due respect to the IACA board, was that the process they've created I find problematic. And I'm not going to read the motion in the interest of time, but I believe it violates the bylaws, which simply says in multiple places, and it's our common practice or standard practice, that it is always a majority vote of the voting member, not a 10%, an arbitrary number that they've created. And so I'm basically proposing that we find a different approach that does not violate the current bylaws or standard practice, and that really reflects the fact that we still struggle with getting members engaged. I think the last vote for election, which was the VP of administration, only had 215 people vote, even though about 1,000 people followed the debate or the forum. So we can get past this one. I just ask members to take a look at that and challenge the board to be more thoughtful about and more realistic about this, and follow the bylaws. And this process for innovative ideas doesn't even say it's a motion, and it doesn't go to the membership. In a roundabout way it does, but I have to have 715 people who inadvertently decide to read it and then support it. I'd rather have a petition process where I could seek out petitions and then make it become a formal motion. But Robert's Rule of Order simply says you have to make a motion, and it only has to be seconded by one person in order for it to go into a discussion or a debate. So we're not following even the basic rules of Robert Rules. And I'll stop on that. They can read that one. It's out there on the forum. So
Yeah, and all of these we will put links to additional information. So we'll put a link for the forums. We'll put a link to all the individual motions for those that listening that can get more information. Mindy, you want to react to that?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask for clarification. So when you said majority of voters, so theoretically, if only 3 people participated, if 2 people voted in favor of something, technically that passes because it is the majority of the people
that's
who
what the
got to
bylaws
vote.
say. Now we can change the bylaws, but we got to go through a process to do that. The language is clear in the bylaws, quote unquote, a majority vote of the voting members. I think it shows up in 2 or 3 places. Now, we've never had this particular issue with voting on motions yet, but I would argue that's our standard practice for elections. It does mention that in other places for overturning, like an ethics complaint. So it's not something new that's just coming from left field. Now, the flip side of that would be if they want to come up with a new bylaw that says 10% of the members have to be voting, then that 50% plus 1 that technically would be 368 voting members to get something on the ballot or to continue it further. I still don't like that, given we only have 215 people that voted in our most recent, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, 6 or 7 candidates who ran for that. We had over 1,000 people at least review the forum, which was, I'm excited about that engagement. But then that turns into, for some reason, only 215 people out of 7,000 take the time to click on a button that says or rank order the membership. We ought to find out why that's the case, right? That's part of my original motion. We'll talk about that in a minute to get behind some of this. Why aren't we more engaged as a professional organization? People should care more about this group and this international association.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons we wanted to do this podcast today is to bring spotlight to this process. I think this was advertised via email to the IACA members, but it wasn't put into the announcement forum, which is something that can be found later. I think this is the email was only sent if you lost the email.
It might have got buried down 350 or 1,000 emails, and I never got back around to looking at it. So
this is going to be a heavy lift to get to the 735 for each one of these motions. And I understand that this is the first go around. This is the first try, and I really hope that this is the first of many opportunities like this to where they schedule them and people know what time of year they're going to be. Maybe we do one in the spring, one at the business meeting in the fall. It's twice a year. I feel that in terms of the forums, the more that the members use the forum and use that as an opportunity for a voice, the more it becomes standard practice for our membership.
To be fair to the board, I want to commend them that they've actually stepped up and started something like this. So I'm not just trying to attack them by pointing out the bylaws. I think we should adhere to what the rules we have, but I do applaud them on a high level for stepping up and trying to honor my request as a motion, and more importantly, coming up with a process for us to do business.
Kind of sort of related to this, I guess I don't want to just come to the table with problems and complaints. With solutions. I mean, like you, I'm optimistic. I hope they do this again. I understand this is a new process and we're trying something. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I guess my only thing is I hope that next time we just have a longer timeline, like whether it be a month, whether it be maybe 2 months. I understand the need to set like hard deadlines just so we actually get things done. People don't procrastinate. People don't
Mm-hmm.
drag their feet on it. But on top of everybody having jobs and everything,
Mm-hmm.
but like school, a lot of people like teach and stuff. This is like the end of the semester. So even with me, I know Noah teaches as well. It's like, oh, it's finals week. Hold on, let me log on and do all this stuff. So
No, it should be just it's just similar to like the elections, right?
Yeah.
There is multiple emails that go out, multiple postings that go out coming up before the election period starts. And this should have the similar feel where it's maybe you pick a month, March, April, whatever it is. And leading up to that, there's conversation. And then during, there's conversation. And then you have the voting period right after. I'm big on consistency. That's why I publish every Monday. You should expect a new episode of Analyst Talk podcast every Monday. Everybody, that's something that people can know when it's coming out and it's consistent. So I think it'll help in the future if there is a consistent time period for this and that people can know, plan accordingly, and be involved.
We talked about that 10% threshold, and I agree, like there should be some threshold, there should be some metric, but we don't have that for anything else, at least to my understanding. Like you guys mentioned earlier, like the most recent election we had with VP, like we only had 215. Like, should that not have counted since we didn't reach the threshold? We didn't reach 375, we didn't reach the 368 or whatever it was. So why particularly this one? When on the off chance that we get like 367, what do we do with that? It's like, oh, sorry, close, but no dice, and then nothing passes. So what do we do with that?
Look, and we'll go through all of these motions, and it looks like 4 people put in for the 9 motions. And so it got me thinking, did members not know about this process, just missed all the documentation, all the advertisements? Do they see it and then didn't have anything really to add? Or did they feel a sense of hopelessness that the fact of like, oh, this is probably not going to pass, so why would take the time to write something that's not have a chance to pass?
I guess down those lines, I would like to see us, whether it's elections or motions or things like this, that we very seriously take these all very seriously, and we're more proactive about that marketing and reminding people. I think there's a lot of things we can do on the website when people log in. We've talked about that in a little bit differently. I also concern more about the apathy, that out of 7,000 people, such a few number, even with 1,000 people, I'm excited about that we've made maybe that transition, but that's still a very small percentage. And there's something about our organizational structure and about our membership. There could be police officers who came to the conference that joined, or students who aren't quite yet professional crime analysts or intelligence analysts. So we need to do some research about that and marketing. And the bigger one that I hear, because I get people who call me now, especially that I'm a little more actively involved again, who are afraid to speak up, whether it's for or against certain things, because they don't want to be targeted or be seen as negative. But in a professional organization, we ought to be able to speak truth and truth to power and share ideas. And that's my bigger concern, is that there are a good number of us, our colleagues, that are just afraid on either side of the issue to put their name on something or to take a position.
All right, let's bring in Deb Piehl now. Deb, how we doing?
We're doing good.
All right.
Whew,
So
I've been flying around the country, but here I am to talk about this stuff.
all right, I appreciate your time given the chaotic nature of your day. So just chime in here on your general thoughts of this innovative ideas process, this idea of members being able to put in motions in between annual conferences.
Sure. And I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity. I think that anybody who knows me would understand that I am all for innovative ideas. We need it in our profession, we need it in our association, and all of us as analysts need to do our best to be innovative. So just in that simple concept, I'm a fan of looking at how we can best do that. At the same time, I do feel that governance, be it from the IACA or from the White House, is a difficult process. And I think especially difficult when you are really committed to trying to give as many members of the constituency the opportunity to both submit innovative ideas, have those considered by an educated percentage of the constituency and voted on and really thought about. And I think there are probably a million good ways to do that, but I also think there's a lot to think about it, how to best go forward with that. So I guess I say that a little bit to express my own feelings that maybe the process is going a little fast, perhaps. And I honestly don't have the time to monitor this sort of process day by day, so there could be things that I missed. But I want to stress that wholeheartedly, I think there needs to be easy, effective, accessible ways to share ideas, be they innovative or more foundational. And so anything that moves that forward and gets the support of whatever quota is determined needs to be met, then I think that's a great idea. It's good for the IACA, and I think it's good for our profession. If nothing else, we're in, I think, very innovative times, and we need to move with that.
All right. Well, let's get into these motions then. And Noah, you talked about the first one briefly, but I do want to bring it back to this as we're starting out to go through each one of these motions. So again, you can just add to what you've already said.
Sure. The other motion I put in really is more just, I want to go on the record because this is the process that the board put together for motions or in lieu of motions. Again, not calling it a motion, calling it an innovative idea. So my original motion of creating a commission or a formal IACA committee to review kind of the state of affairs, I just wanted to make sure on the record that got put out there for people to look at and honor me. It just happens to be me, but any member that wants to put an idea forward, and we should do that. And since they created this process, I wanted to make sure that my original motion got included. So that's one of my motions, is just to formally state that I move to create a commission to review the current state of affairs. And you can read it for yourself. I won't need to say anything else more about that, but I think it's a bigger deal. I think we've grown to 7,000 members. We've kind of outgrown. We're going to talk more about that, about some other motions that are out there on how to maybe change our structure. But this is the research piece that points to and allows members to share their concerns anonymously or through another commission, completely checks and balance wise, an objective commission that is just there to collect this information. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So the first one that you had is challenging this process, and that, hey, this may violate the current bylaws and standard practice. So that's the first one, that they're just challenging the 10% threshold with the 735 in favor. And then the second one you did was to create a commission. And I think for this podcast, commission, working group, committee, it's all the same thing in this regard. What we're saying is we're going to create a special group that is going to be tasked to answer certain questions or complete a certain task. So just so there's not any confusion on that.
Let me add to that, and why I think it's important. The bylaws do allow members to make motions and to create committees and projects themselves. Again, you've got to get it got to be put out there, whether it's a working group or not. This is a motion to create that committee from the membership, not from the board. And we have a right to do that if you follow the bylaws and whatever protocol we come up with. And at this point, I want to at least have them honor that. It's not their committee that reports back to them and they get to make the decision. This is a committee/commission or committee that will do the research with the support of the full membership or majority of the voting members of the membership. But we get busy, and it's run objectively outside the realm of the board, in my opinion. That it's a different committee than they've created. They're going to argue they've got two working groups, one to look at ethics, one to look at elections. They're going to create another one probably for bylaws. This is not that. This is something independent of the board controlling it, and let the members have their say. And so that's my original motion that I want to be heard.
this whole thing, the problems that have come up is this idea of there is a bylaws and then enforcing the bylaws. This is a little bit problematic with the association in that we have these bylaws. What's the mechanism to ensure that these bylaws are enforced? And so the bylaws does talk about committees that can be created and worked on by members. But how does anybody do that if it's never been done before? The bylaws say, how does that get into motion and then the bylaws enforced? So, Deb, what do you think?
Having known Noah for a very, very long time, I always believe that his intentions, even his heart, is always around greater collaboration, greater interaction, more mixing and mingling and sharing of ideas, all of that. And I'm supportive of all of that. And I do spend time thinking about these things from a few different perspectives. I was a big fan of the listserv, the way it was. Mm-hmm. Now, I know there might have been some technical issues with that, might always be needing to upgrade the platforms and services that we use. But I think a big step forward in further collaboration and further outreach by the IACA in general would be to have just more email communication in people's faces, if you will. I still find it difficult, not difficult in a physical way, but just a little cumbersome to get to the forum and go through and look at things there. I think with the new system, we do miss some opportunities to remind people just that the association is there and you're a member. Here's something that came up. So that might sound simplistic in a need, but I've thought about that for a long time. And I just think that's a simple opportunity where we're missing one of the things that we're striving to achieve. So then to move beyond that in a greater sense of outreach and collaboration, I always wonder every year that it seems we have around 50-50 at every conference, where it's somewhere around 50% are first-time attendees. Now, I don't know what ratio an association like the IACA should be striving for, but as one of the old-timers, I would like to see a higher rate of returning attendees. And that might sound somewhat anti-growth or something, but we are in such a dynamic profession. And I do feel personally that the IACA has been a huge element of my career and a huge part of my ability to learn new things, expand my thinking, hear about what other people are doing around the country, meet new people, all those things. I'm very, very grateful that the IACA exists. And I wonder why we don't have more returning attendees. And I know that often has to do with budgets and travel issues and everybody's scraping for money, all that sort of thing. So there's lots of things to discuss there, but I think that we might want to look into some of those factors. Why is that? I want to see it grow in ways that I think the ultimate mission of what we're trying to accomplish, that we grow professionally, and that professional analysts are seeking out other professional analysts to share ideas and push each other and that sort of thing. So I think we are in a very different age. There's a lot of competition for analysts' attention these days, and we have to figure all of that out. I'm sitting here talking to you from a rest area off the highway because just you and I, for example, lead very busy lives in our profession. I think that's different from even 5 years ago, and certainly very different from 10 years ago. So I'm not sure how much people can absorb and how much people can get more involved.
Let's move on to the third one then. And so this is the one that I put in. And I'll say this, I put in 4 of the 9 motions, and I will totally pick on myself that I was hoping there would be more people that come along and put in motions, but I decided late in the game in this whole thing, this 2-week period, that, hey, if no one's going to put in there, let me put in 3 or 4 that I think are important. And not, to give, maybe you can pick on me for giving content to this podcast, right? And you can also pick on me for saying death by working group, because mine deal with a lot with proposing to create a working group. So with all that being said, my motion is to create a working group to establish a membership feedback process for proposed rules. So what I'd like to see with the association is just a way for members to have a voice prior to a new rule being enacted. I'm not talking about all rules. That's why the working group would have to establish what proposed rules fit into that criteria. But I just feel like there's so often the rule is not discussed anywhere, and then all of a sudden it's bam, it's right there, it's in play, and the majority of members didn't have an opportunity to voice an opinion on that particular rule change. And this can be stuff like requirements that we would have, or costs, or benefits, or things that impact the members directly. For instance, instructor requirements, certification requirements, conference instructor benefits. That was one that changed this year. Historically, instructors at the conference, those that got their presentations got picked, received a full waived registration fee. Like, they didn't have to pay registration fee. And this year, $250 you have to pay for registration fee as an instructor. And I understand that the cost of the conference and increasing cost, and that's what they're trying to counter. But I would have liked an opportunity to voice my concern and to have them think about maybe some alternatives, or at least, again, it directly impacts me. I've said a long time, I don't make money off the podcast. Going to the conference is something I have to pay out of pocket. And so to me, this was a big one. The fact that they changed this and it was just boom, it was there, no discussion. It was just something that was there. And I've asked if can it be prorated? If I only show up one day for the conference, can it be prorated instead of paying the whole $250? And they said no. So whether you're there one day or 5 as an instructor, you have to pay the $250. So that's just one. I mean, we got a little bit. That was one that's near and dear to my heart, so I'm going on to that. But that was just one idea of just some of the things that this committee could identify. If this is going to change, we're going to give the members an opportunity to chime in. And I think this innovative ideas process is the way to do it. Put it up there. Give 2 weeks, and if more time is needed, give an opportunity to have more time, but give members an opportunity to talk about certain rules that are going to be changed in the association.
I really absolutely agree with that. And the way I think we would have to move forward on that is to create some sort of formalized structure for that. Mm-hmm. I don't even think it's so much in worrying about the level of feedback or debate that happens, but there should absolutely be a structure for people to comment. I think just as there is in general local governments, when something is proposed, there's usually a certain period of time where people have the opportunity to comment or ask questions or what have you. And then there's a period of time that the association has to respond back to some of that. And obviously this back and forth can't take forever, but it should probably be more formalized. And if there is a formal process already, I'm not sure what it is. But then it also gets back to then, how are we sure that this information, number one, is put out there for the membership, and then number two, that the membership actually sees it. And I think there's just a lot of work that could be done around that simple fact. But I agree with you. Every now and then I hear about something new that has happened, and it's not that it stresses me too much. I just sometimes think like, oh, well, I guess I missed all of that because I didn't know that was coming. Yeah. And I don't think it's anybody's intention to do things without that sort of awareness going on. I think there's just not a good structure and process for it, and there should be.
I guess I don't want to be like a naysayer. Like what
Mhm.
you're saying, I agree is a good idea. I just wanted further clarifications in terms of like what would be the scope of this working group and also like the scope of like what the executive board does. So, I mean, in theory, we elected these people to make
Mhm.
these decisions for us. I mean, I would love to get more membership involved, but like waiting for a majority of 7,000 people to all chime in, it doesn't like it'll take forever just to make like a simple change. So I guess like do you have any further logistics of how this would work? Like what decisions would they make? Like something like that. I thank you for letting me know. I didn't know that was a thing. But like did the conference committee determine that? Did the executive board determine that? Like I don't know who determined that change, but I assume there's a reason. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't think that they're operating with malice or anything, but
Mhm.
like I said, like where's the line of like, all right, we trust our executive board, we trust our conference committee or whatever committee to make these decisions on our, as in the membership's behalf.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I'm just wondering like, where's the line of that of like, okay, this
Sure.
needs more membership eyes on it. This is like, okay, we need to move forward. So somebody's going to make the executive decision.
Yeah. And I'm not saying these go to a membership vote. I'm not saying that this is like a pure democracy situation where you call on the members to vote on every single decision that the IACA does. I just think that there's an opportunity for membership feedback on certain items. And that's why, given the time that I had to really flesh this out, I knew I wasn't going to be able to name everything. I knew there was going to be caveats and complications on this stuff. That's why I went, let's go the working group route. Let's let them do the research, create best practices, come up with a process on what is and what is not going to be. You have this grace period before it goes into enactment. Training costs and forum rules and election rules and ethics rules. I mean, these are things that should they change, the membership should have an opportunity to review them, ask questions before they get put into place. So if you might be a subject matter expert in that, or you might come up with caveat that's better as a member. And so I just think there needs to be some kind of opportunity for members to get a voice in this.
First, the fact that you and I had to put in the majority of the motions, and Mindy to some extent, one of their concerns was that we have to be careful about coming up with a process because they're going to get inundated with motion. I'm not worried about that. I think people are thoughtful. If it's near and dear to them, they're going to step up. But I don't think we have the problem of thinking we're going to get 10,000 or 1,000 or 100 motions and we won't be able to manage them. And I think this is indicative of that. One. Two, the other example of that is when they changed the code of conduct in December, the board did that. It went out. It affects all of us from an ethics standpoint, from a ethics complaint standpoint. And that's a good example of how it shouldn't go out without a discussion, or at least become aware of what are those changes and what was the rationale behind them. One way to handle that, and that's what local government does in city councils, is they do what are called consent decrees. So there might be a list of 20 items that have been staffed at maybe a study, and you put it on and you pass all of these modifications. And if somebody's interested in that, they can see the agenda and they can read it, and they can get it pulled off the agenda, but they agree to all those things. And so there's ways to do that. I think one of the longest city council meetings I attended was a debate over tennis courts and pickleball courts in the parks department, right? It went for like past midnight. It was like a big debate, but it was important to people, right? And they showed up for that particular issue. You don't know what you don't know unless you put it out there for discussion or the rationale. And then if there was research, if the training committee puts together a new proposal for whatever, picking new trainers, right? Or moving from online, face-to-face to online, I at least think for those of us who care, and I've been a certified instructor, I might look at that and have something to say about that. And you're just giving people the opportunity. 90% of this stuff will get passed without anybody yelling or being, they might send a nice email saying, well, have you thought about this? And you leave it at that. I think we create a bigger problem. We think it's going to fall out of the sky when in fact I don't think it's going to happen that often. It's just about a courtesy to paying members who are here. And so I applaud at least the concept of, again, engaging members, giving us all an opportunity, if we choose to look at things or pay attention, and bringing it to our colleagues' attention and shining some light on it when necessary. So,
all right, well, let's move on then. We did have one other person put in for a motion, and John, I'm going to butcher his last name, Anteyii, Anteyii. John, I am sorry. Mindy, you want to just give an overview of John's motions?
Yeah, I can do that. And I was going to say, should we put in that little detail that 3 out of the 4 people who put in, it's like on this recording right now, like we probably should have reached out to John, see if he was interested in joining us too while we're at it.
I should have. Yeah, you're right.
It's all right. Hi, John. Yeah, so John put in, I think it was 5. So the first motion that John put forward was to have adjusted rates for the CLIA and LEAF exams for different countries instead of just going by whatever the USD rate is. And then the second one is the annual conference should be rotated around different countries. So it's not just always in the USA. The third one is leadership positions and successful planning. So people, like especially younger people who are like interested in leadership roles, to have opportunities to be mentored and get involved early. And I feel like the word groomed is weird, so I don't want to use that word. Like groomed to be leader. Yeah, so like to be mentored. And then next up, number 4 is having regional chapter accessibilities around the clock. So whenever they need to use something through IACA, it's available to them. They don't need to use it within whatever time somebody from IACA is available to help. And then the last one, the 5th one, is membership referrals and recognition systems. So if somebody recommends somebody to get recognized for it, have some incentive to recruit people, I guess. So those are the 5.
That last one, we do have a recognition system. You may not be aware of it. It's the Ambassador Award. It wouldn't be just for a one member that you might have suggested. He's also talking about, if I do a referral, like you do with other stuff, if you refer a friend for a product, you get a discount in the next month. I think like Netflix or something like that. If another person joins and you recommended them, you might get a $10 discount next month or something. Those are good incentives, but we do have an award process called the Ambassador Award for those individuals who consistently or over a year have brought membership, either a whole group or a significant number of people into the fold, if you will.
Yeah, I did respond to John's post on the forums. I think I messed up the award. I think I called it the membership award instead of ambassador, so my bad.
One other quick reaction, and we're called the International Association of Crime Analysts, so I'm fully supportive of that initiative. But we have 17,000 police departments here in the United States. And for example, we have a regional association in Tennessee that the last time I checked was only 6 members. There are also other places that we should provide incentives or discounts as they grow. And then over time, if you do a group, you already get a discount if you're over certain thresholds. So we do that regardless of what country you're from. If you bring a group of members to the table, I think we give a discount for other kinds of things, again, to the conference. If you're part of the FBI, I saw something that I never seen before, that certain federal agencies got discounts. And I'm like, they got a lot of money for training, a lot more than the agencies I've worked for in the past. So I just want to make sure we're inclusive of any area, regardless of country, that would benefit from, or the association would benefit from, by giving those same incentives, not just necessarily international discounts. So
the international piece, I don't disagree with the concept or the desire to move the conference around. I don't know how to do it. I personally don't know how to make that happen in any sort of sustainable way. I wish it could happen. I just think that's difficult. Just from a practical sense, I think it's difficult. And I don't know that there are other associations similar to ours that do manage to carry that off. I think everything is hard about it, and given all of the complications, just simply time zones and language, and then the expense of travel and all of that, I think are just difficult practical considerations. I don't think there's anybody that wouldn't want to do it if we could. I just think that's hard.
Yeah. We used to have an international symposium that was not part of the conference. It took place about once a year, I think in the springtime, that was opposite of the annual conference. And that would be at an international location. And I'm not actually sure why we stopped doing that or when that stopped happening, but it's been a while.
I think
This
the last 2 or
opportunity.
3, Jason, that we tried did not get the number. I know
Okay.
they did some European. Sam had tried really hard to do 2 or 3 times. He's created his own little area over there that they are doing now, a couple. They're not IACA endorsed. They're not necessarily in partnership with the IACA. I'd like to see that again. We've done some in Canada. That's where the numbers grow, right? When we host an annual conference or a training conference, that's when we move it around the country, all of a sudden that association or co-sponsor of that state all of a sudden grows in numbers. I just don't think the numbers are there to replace the annual conference that for American analysts would go to, but I think we ought to continue or find a way to do that spring symposium or maybe bridge the gap between those things. I don't want to do it instead of, because I think then I know a lot of the US people could not leave the country to attend a conference. Their agency just won't pay for international travel. And so we got to find a balance between those two things.
For the first point regarding certifications, I did tag the certification chair on the forums as well, just asking. So there is a reduced rates for countries on developing like nations list. I don't know what the list is right now, but CLIA is a flat rate of $75 USD, including retakes, and LEAF is a flat rate of $50 USD, including retakes. I don't know if that's like set in stone or if it can be adjusted for like even more developing countries. I don't know what that translates to in local currency, but I just wanted to throw it out there for people who don't know that there is an adjusted rate for different countries.
All right. So then the next one, another one of mine, which is a creation of IACA working groups on member communication and information sharing. This deals with the idea of transparency, which seems to have been talked about a lot in the past year with the IACA. And I just want a group to, again, study all the documentation that the IACA has and come up with a way to create a library for members to find information. I really feel that the standard should be everything's going to be shared with the members unless there's a reason not to. And that there is either confidentiality or business-wise, it would impact the association, stuff like that. I think the mantra that I've heard from the board was just ask us and we'll tell you. And then some people do that, and I've done that. But I think whatever information was given to me should be available to everybody. There should be this section out there that are like, okay, here's what was asked for. Here's the information in case you ever want to know what that is. There needs to be a way for the membership to be informed and to have access to various documents with the association.
I'm reflecting back on the 30 years of the IACA, and over the years until the last even 5 or so years, maybe 10, we've lost those historical records for good, right? People took them with them, whether they were the newsletter, whether they were old bylaws, and that really shouldn't be the case in an organization that we understand the importance of records and keeping track of stuff. But it is. But going forward, a dedicated process and some protocols for keeping that stuff in case a new board comes on board and wants to refer back to not only maybe an old bylaw, but some of the communication on why we did it that way. So we're not reinventing the wheel over and over and over again. Why can't I use the logo? What was the rationale for not using the logo if I'm a candidate? And maybe it's a good argument, but I don't know what that is. But it would be nice to go back and understand what the current conversation was, whether that's a memo or a committee that pulled that together and then made those things, or even for the board to have those historical records to review when we consider new things. We get a lot of suggestions that I heard on some of the posts we've had previously for the VP of Administration, and it's like, we already do that. Like Mindy just brought up, well, the certification already gives a discount. Well, if it was that readily available, then we could just point that person to say, oh, go read this. Good, that's a good idea, but we do it, or here's why we don't do it, and you could educate yourself. And so I applaud this one as well.
So I understand the sentiment, and at the most foundational level, all information that can be shared should be shared. And I don't doubt that there is information that should be shared that for a variety of reasons doesn't get shared. But I feel kind of strongly about this, that there are a variety of different ways for people to stay on top of things. And I'm pretty confident that there is only a handful of members that really work at that. So every year at the conference, first of all, I go every year. There's only a couple that I've missed over the past many years. So there's that. I always plan to stay on the Friday for that business meeting. Very, very few members do. I have only occasionally over the years used the virtual opportunities to attend board meetings. Maybe there should simply be more information simply put out in the form of newsletters or meeting summaries or something that was just sent to people, and they can choose not to read it or not read it, or comment or not comment, rather than expecting people to take some sort of action within their workday to listen to a meeting or something like that. I think there's always opportunities for greater information sharing in a variety of ways. And I think there's two things that come up on this topic. There's information sharing, of course, and I think in every enterprise that can always be made better and really needs a lot of attention. And then there's the whole concept of transparency. In a similar way, I think it's something that the entity, the IACA, has to always be making sure that they're maintaining standards like that. But I struggle when it's put out there somewhat in the negative, that there's things going on and there is no transparency. I feel it's a little bit a cultural buzzword right now across all of our cultural institutions and our government institutions. And to say that there needs to be more doesn't necessarily equal for me that there's a crisis in transparency. And I think it comes back to a lot of what we've spoken about already. Mm-hmm. Everybody is busy. Everybody has only so much time in their day. Most of the experience in working good analysts are putting in way more than 40 hours a week, whether it's actual work or in that constant effort to maintain their skills. And so I think there's only so much that people can do, and it's hard to keep up on everything. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that those are issues and needs that always need attention, and it's the responsibility of that governing entity to always be striving for more and not less. And I think, as you mentioned, to always be striving to make sure everything that should be shared by bylaws and whatever else dictates things that should be shared, we should always be making sure that all of that, whether someone thinks it's consequential or not, if it can be shared, it should be shared.
I was going to say that I also agree with this. It makes sense to me. And just having these files and documentations, take out all the personal private stuff, sure. But I guess I don't want to say it's a challenge, but more of a clarification. Travel policy, records, expense summaries, lists of benefits, like you were saying with like the mantra that the board already gives of like, oh, if you want it, just ask. And to me, I'm like, well, it technically exists in the business meeting. Whenever they do their big presentation, this information is technically given to us. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how many people do you think are interested in this? Like, for me, personally speaking, I'm interested in it, but I'm one person. Just say 10, 20, a small percentage of the 7,000. So I'm just curious, like, one, how many people are actually interested in it? Two, like, how many people will actually look at it? And are we just proposing stuff that only like 100 people out of 7,000 are interested? It's like, what's that phrase? It's like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Or like, are we doing something that only a few people want? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, I think of as a member of any organization, you have the right to certain documentation. If there's no reason not to give it, then it should be available, right? And there's more details that could be involved. And a lot of that business meeting at the conference, there is more information that could be discussed. Again, this is why I went to the working group concept here, because I know there's going to be a lot that has to be hashed out in terms of what documents can be available, what aren't going to be available, how it's going to, what's the procedure, just all that. There is a lot there, but I think it's an opportunity to create this library. So hey, it's going to your point. Well, who's it going to be important to? It's going to be important to you when it's important to you, and that seems funny to say, but until you're going along and then something happens with the association and then you're like, oh, well, why did that happen? I need more information. And then you're trying to find more information about whatever that topic is. And that should just be available to the members in a library format. All right. And to the listeners here, we don't know the exact order that these are going to show up on the ballot as we're voting. So in the show notes, the description, the timestamp, and the name of the motion will be listed there, so you can bounce around depending on what order you're voting in. Just FYI on that one. All right, Mindy, your proposal. Let's talk about you.
I feel like my proposal, like comparatively, is so like it's serious, but like not as serious as like other things. So my proposal, I wanted like an opt-in buddy system for the conference committee.
Yeah. Hey, it got some love there on the forum. There was a lot of hearts on that original posting.
I didn't want to say it, but I was gonna say mine had the most reactions compared to your guys'.
Sometimes the simplest things are very important, though. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of leverage in that the concept that you're proposing here in terms of a buddy system and in bringing new members on board. I know churches do this. If someone goes for the first time to visit and attend a service, I know churches that send one or two people out as a welcoming committee, right? And this is kind of down those lines, and that there's a lot of merit in getting those. Then they feel welcome. They become engaged. They care more about the profession by doing one little thing. And it doesn't have to be a lot. Make somebody a cake, right? Or send them a cupcake, or buy them a cup of coffee at the conference. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to escort this person around the entire conference, but you introduce them, you bring them together, and I think it's neat. I think it's simple, right? I mean, at some level, we don't have to make this real complicated.
So logistically, it was just when we're registering, just a few extra questions like, hey, do you want to participate in this thing? If you do, like, hey, this is your buddy for the week. And I wanted it to be more like trying to use the right word so it doesn't sound weird and creepy. But like, I don't want to say intimate, but it's, you go to this big conference, there's so many people and you meet so many, and it's just like, here's my business card, okay, bye forever. So I was like, hey, let's have a more semi-structured like networking. It's like, here's one-on-one, here's your buddy, like maybe you go to class together, or maybe you go to lunch together, or maybe you go to like these other events together, just so you're not alone. I mean, I think on the surface, very beneficial for those who are more shy, reserved, introvert, whatever, instead of meeting like 10 people all at once, like here's just the one person. And just more intentional. I think I mentioned this in one of my responses because Noah said, oh, this is like speed dating. And I was like, no, it's like an arranged marriage. And I was like, right after I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm probably like not selling this very well and scaring people off. But I was like trying to.
I said that very facetiously and fun. So I don't think it's like speed dating, but and I've participated in speed dating. Trust me, it's not a pleasant experience. So.
Would you participate in an arranged marriage? I'm just kidding.
I wouldn't do that either, but I've got a couple of friends that have been subject to that, I guess, or tried to be subject to that.
Yeah, so I was like, hey, this is just your one buddy. You don't have to tried to just connect. And I do recognize, like I said, it's a lot going on. There's hundreds of people, so many things going on. Like it's intense and overwhelming, especially if it's your first time. So it's like, hey, you got this one buddy that's there for you. Like, hey, I got you. And theoretically, you have a seasoned attendee with a new, and that makes sense. But since this is mostly a randomized process, you can have two people that are new and they're together now. But at least, like, hey, you're not alone in all of this. So I just thought it would be a nice, like I said, semi-formal way to connect people, like on a deeper level, instead of like, hello, handshake, hello, and then business card, and then bye. So
maybe a first-time attendee reception, and we hook them up at that point, and then they can decide what they want to do or go together. Somebody that, even if there's just two new people, at least you've got a buddy to go to some of the sessions with, or let's meet for lunch and talk a little bit about stuff, right? And give them that opportunity, something a little more structured that makes those connections for them. And that's why I do like the idea.
Half the attendees are first-time attendees. So this is a pretty substantial group of people that come to the conference every year. I have been guilty of, you talked about lunch. I've been at conferences where I ate alone at lunch, and just sometimes you get busy and you didn't get into that group or whatever it is, and everybody's gone, and it's I don't know, you have to plan ahead. So I snoozed and I lost, kind of thing. It can be quite intimidating if you're a first timer, and perhaps even another level to this, that you're the only member of your agency attending the conference. That's another aspect to this thing. This is a wonderful opportunity to help those that are first timers to network. Deb, your thoughts?
I am definitely on board with anything that would help new attendees, new analysts meet people and then meet some of us who are longtime members and feel comfortable at the conference, and at the end of the week, feeling like they really have networked, they've met people, and they've met people that they can reach out to on a regular basis. And I think it's incumbent upon people like you and I and Mindy and Noah and various people to try, probably harder than we do in the conference, to do more of that outreach.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah, we didn't have a contest to see who's going to get the most votes, but I don't know if I'm gambling on these ones. So. All right. So next one, another one is mine. This is not a working group. The motion is to have committee meetings be open to members for observation and engagement. Right now, the committee chair is a lifelong appointment, and some of the committees, there's rarely an opening and it's hard to get engaged. And so you may come in to the association, have a desire to know more information about a particular committee, and this would be an opportunity for, I'm interested in this. If there's opportunities to volunteer, sign me up. I want to learn more. I want to eventually be a member of this committee. And so it gives an opportunity to shadow the committee in a way, and to get more information and to be available should an opportunity to help arise. If there's meetings on Zoom, that they would be announced and people could sign up, just like the normal process that they go through with the executive board when they hold the quarterly meeting. It would be a similar process to that. The committee comes together, schedules a Zoom call, it's announced, it's scheduled, and people know about it, and say they can sign up for it just to observe. If the committee doesn't normally have a scheduled meeting on a quarter, maybe the committee chairs should consider having one, just to allow this process. If people are interested, people want to sign up and get more information. If nobody signs up, just you can cancel it. It's not like I'm not promoting having a meeting in an empty online room or anything like that. But just, again, this is an opportunity for those that are interested and want to get involved, but there's no current openings, and so this would be an avenue for them to get involved.
Yeah, I like just the fact that we're again offering it up for those interested parties. One more way to engage. They're not voting members. They're just a fly on the wall maybe, but they're learning because they have a future interest in being on a committee or that particular committee, or I'm really interested in international affairs. I'd like to sit in on a couple of international meetings to hear what are the issues. Kind of like an apprenticeship almost, right? In terms of the new members, that new person is like, well, I'm not ready to be on a committee. I don't really know enough about. We talked about one proposal was having test in our other working group to run as a candidate. Well, this is the way you can educate yourself, right? You don't need to take a test, but become more familiar with the operations, whatever that looks like over time. And so again, I like any idea that we could float, do it as a pilot project to see how many people get interested. Are they engaged? And if people don't, then it's no harm, no foul kind of a mentality.
So I know the idea is like live interaction and actually being there, but just thinking about like different time zones, especially people who live like on the other side of the world where it's like a 12-hour, 14-hour difference. Should these meetings also be recorded and stored somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they should. There's recordings and there's minutes and there's transcripts that all could be made available. So that's another opportunity for those that may not be able to attend at that particular time. You're not going to, it's going to be really difficult to get one time for all 7,000 members of the association to be on a call at once. Deb, what do you think?
And again, I think that there is merit to the idea because periodically, not often or anything, but sometimes I learn of a committee that I didn't even know existed. And had I known, maybe I would have wanted to be involved. And I think there should be some reporting out, perhaps. The only hesitation I have, and in full disclosure, I'm on the conference committee, is I think that committees in general and members of committees do need some opportunity to just within the committee structure throw some ideas around and have a open, robust discussion about if you like the idea or you don't like the idea or you feel very strongly about the idea without perhaps then being concerned that you're going to have to justify what you said in a discussion to the greater population because people might not like it or something. I think there's a middle ground where people should know what committees are doing and probably also should know who's on various committees. So at the very least, if you have a question, who you could reach out to about that. Maybe at least the chairman or co-chairs, if there are co-chairs, we should make that information readily available. And then, I don't know, as a start, maybe they quarterly report on what they're doing. And if it's the type of committee that doesn't do anything unless there is something in their purview to do, then they could just say no action this quarter. But I'd like to think about it more. But I think in the idea that there should be more information about the committees, what the committees do, what the committee is for, and then also what the committee is doing in its current role. Like my committee is very busy. The conference committee is always very busy. So there probably should be some regular reporting out of what's happening there. Because again, I could be wrong about this, but I think that I agree with you that there might not be a lot of information shared about what different committees are doing. Somebody could say otherwise, I guess, if there are committees out there that are always sharing what they're doing. But if that's happening, then I've missed it, I guess.
All right, very good. Let's move on. Noah, this one's yours on a working group for the possible restructuring of the IACA.
Yeah, and again, not to be confused with my larger motion that creates a commission to just solicit and collect any concerns or ideas. This is more focused, and it really boils down to the fact that we've really great applause for the board and for everybody that served and continues to serve as volunteers. We've grown the association exponentially since COVID, and internationally we've done the same thing. So, but we've gotten to a point, I think, that the current structure and model and the way we govern ourselves as a membership-based organization is no longer serving us as good as it should. And I think we need to consider at least research and then make some recommendations on how to improve representation. And I don't have I'm not saying we do it this way or that way, but this is a motion to create a working group or a committee to research and provide recommendations for restructuring the IACA, the executive board, the committee structure, any staff positions that we've kind of bounced around, and designing a structure that also includes or enhances the checks and balances that I think as we've grown now, it's important for us to have that. So some of that is about looking at whether or not the existing board is big enough. Does that become a board of directors or not? Do we want a bigger group like a Senate? And the model that I propose, or at least that we could use as an example, we don't have to do it the same way, but as a university faculty senate, that each of the different areas, disciplines kind of have representations. I would do that by a charter or chapter, or maybe a country could have a representative. And from that pool of the Senate pool, we call it that in a small s Senate, would make up our committee chairs. And we give them, like we did most recently, we reached out to all the committee chairs to ask for their input about the replacement for secretary. And don't do that informally. Let's formalize that structure and give them a voice and a vote. And you represent a group. Your regional associate, you're their representative, and that's your constituency. And I don't know what the numbers ought to be, but that would be one element of it. So it's just something to consider. We should rethink, given how big we are now, and that we're now truly international, that we rethink what that structure might look like. The bigger thing for me always is it is a membership-based organization, and every member should have a voice and be represented one way or another, and to some extent through motions, through an elected official who represents me, someone I can touch or talk to that will listen to me and what my concerns are, and continue to vote in the members' best interest. So I'll leave it at that. I think people could read it. It's a little bit longer one, make some suggestions for some staffing that I think we bounced around ideas. I think it's time we do that. That might include needing to get a grant or raise the dues to be able to pay for an executive director, or a dedicated chief financial officer who's our CPA that manages our funds, right? And not a volunteer treasurer. One of the reasons I really promote that is that those are the two positions that we tend to nominate by acclamation. Nobody wants to sign up for treasurer. No one jumps at the chance of being secretary, although this last time I think we had a half a dozen people say they were interested. But they really ought to be a board of director first, equal status. They're all board members, and let the day-to-day operations like finances and the documents that you talk about, keeping those records up to date, those become someone's part-time or full-time job, because we're all busy as volunteers. And I think we've outgrown a volunteer organization, to be honest with you. It's difficult to run a 7,000 member organization completely with volunteer people and not giving them a voice in that operation. So
yeah, Richie Martinez always calls it the church model. Not that that's derogatory for churches, but it's just this idea that it's the church, we get volunteers, and most churches are pretty small, it can work and all this other stuff. But once you get so big and you want to try to make money, or you need to go more business model to a point.
My question, again, I putting you on the spot, and I guess I don't expect an answer now, but just to think about, how do we expand that to ensure that we're getting new voices and new memberships? Because with all these proposals with like different working groups and people, I don't want it to be like the same usual suspects who sign up. I would like to think that I'm objective and fair and all that stuff, but other people might think differently. And I don't want this to be like another thing that just the usual people are doing it. It's like, yeah, there's all these different groups, but it includes like the same 10 people, the same 20 people, the same whatever. So how do we advertise this and encourage people who've never stepped up with IACA and like make them feel welcome, make them feel like, hey, like, please, yes, join us. It's not just going to be like an echo chamber of like the same people, same ideas talking in circles. I'm just curious, like, what we can do to encourage more people to come in.
Yeah, I think one thing is to have, I don't want to call them term limits, because I think if we vote and that we want the same people doing it because they're doing a good job, we should, as members, be able to have our voice heard. But I do think we can create where you can't stay in the position forever, or you rotate out. In my proposal, it talks about there's other organizations that do this. Instead of having a president serve a 3-year term, they get voted in as a third or second vice president. they move to the first vice president position. Maybe they run a different part. And then for 1 year, after they've been in there for 2 years, they become president. And then they're off for a period of time, right? And we can do that with the same structure with committee members. Maybe we have to, you always have an apprentice who you serve for 2 years on a committee. You have a sub or a co-chair or a sub-chair, right? That's going to take over, and then you step away, and then they have to go pick not a brand new person, but I think you pick from your committee members, and you continue to educate, and you continue to be inclusive, and when people that want to step up, we make sure we give them a task or a job or get them on a committee, because we've had a lot of the same faces and people, including me. I've ran for president 3 times and was elected 3 times, right? We could create some rules that create new blood. We do that at the university, that 10% or 20% of the people on this committee have to be brand new members every year or every 2 years. And that forces us as an organization to invite new, exciting, new ideas, the millennials or whatever, Gen Xers that look at the world differently, right? People that have experienced COVID differently. I'm going on 67 and I'm an old salty dog, right? I believe in rules, and I'm German, and my kids don't think the same way I do. They're 34 and 32. And I think we have to, in a growing profession, be very aware of that. And again, listen, open up our ears. And I tend not to do that very well as an old salty dog as well.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting, the power of just asking. I do the podcast, and I ask, hey, if you want to be on my podcast, contact me. And I think I can count on one hand the number of people that have done that. And but asking them, I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. Part of this is you always do a call, you promote the working group as much as you can, but sometimes it's just going to come back to, it's like, okay, identifying who might be a good candidate to be on that committee, and then just plain ask them.
The other big point on this particular proposal or idea or motion, whatever you want to call it, is this idea of really wrapping our head around what does it mean to have self-governance. And there are nonprofits and 501c3s that do have a board of directors, and they make all the decisions, and that's their bylaws, right? That they get, somehow they come together. This organization is never, from the start, never created that way. It was a membership professional organization that was to be networking and inclusive, and we've grown to be 7,000 people. But how do we create a model that continues to be self-governing? And I think we've grown in the last decade into really, in some ways, empowering the board. And I've heard them say multiple times that, well, I've been elected to make these decisions, and some would argue some haven't been, some have been appointed. They don't look for input before they maybe make a vote. They don't have a specific constituency besides all of us, but because we don't open that communication like we're suggesting in many of these things, more input from the members. The fact that any member could put in a motion, we've kind of gotten away from that. And again, I don't even think the board ought to make decisions about the conference on what color the napkins ought to be or what we're having for lunch. They should step away and not micromanage and empower that committee. But it wouldn't be hard to put a survey out to ask people. We have people who have special dietary concerns that might have a luncheon, and we're going to ask them, do they want a vegetarian dish or chicken or steak or something like that? So in today's technological times, we can ask a lot more input than we've done this way, and it's not that hard. So
again, at the heart of this, somebody should definitely look into the best ways to structure a 7,000 member association. I suspect that hasn't been done in any organized scientific way in a long time. In the past, there's been lots of talk about, should we have some kind of full-time employee that stays on top of the regular administration of things? Maybe we're at the point that we need something like that. I think that it would be worth definitely doing more than it simply be run by a lot of volunteers, because it's getting much bigger. And I would like to put something forward, like we've grown to such a point, which is a very positive thing, that we have to think about what's the best way to structure such an association so that all members are adequately served. and even determining what does that mean? What is our goal? What does it mean to have a member be adequately served, and figure that out. I think it's definitely worth looking at.
All right. Very good. And the last motion, another one of mine, is to create a lifetime achievement webpage. So for those that may not know, there is a lifetime achievement recognition membership for the association, and Noah is actually one of them. A couple months ago, we were trying to figure out who's on that list. I know that Mark Stallo is, and I know that Steve Gottlieb is, but I'm not sure after that who's actually has that status. So first off, just create a web page that people can find and know who has that honor. Let's recognize them. And number two, talk about the logistics of like how somebody gets on, how someone gets that status. So it's a pretty simple one. It's just let's create something to recognize both the people and the status.
I agree with that idea. I don't know who else is on the list, but I do of people who I think should be on the list, and as far as I know, they're not. And is there even a list? I mean, I know like the three people you just rattled off, but if there are more, I'm not sure. I mean, even someone like Brian Hills, should he posthumously be on that list? He certainly had a lifetime of achievements, and we give an award out in his name, so he should be there. Yes, I think that needs some structure to it, and how do we determine that someone is eligible for lifetime achievement, and then what does that mean? What do they get for that? And I think that's important. I think every association needs its lifetime achievers, its old guard, if you will, its mentors, its Warren Buffetts of the IACA. And I think it is important because I don't know if there's anyone out there who's thinking they should be on the list and they're not, or something like that, but there could be. And we definitely should have definitions around it and figure out how people do get there. And I think it has to be more than things like they have CLIA certification or something like that. It has to be like the people who have that status. They've contributed for a long time over a career in a variety of ways. And so however those sorts of things are determined, it's like a Cooperstown sort of vote or something. But yeah, I agree that needs to be addressed.
I don't think Noah should be on there. I don't think he's old enough. 67's too young. That's not a full lifetime yet. Come on.
Yeah, I'm 67. I'm not over yet. I'm still teaching college. And Jason, I think when you did the original podcast with me, you and I talked. I think at that time I was retired. Yeah. And you said you're probably not done yet. We'll probably be hearing from you again. And here I am, probably deeper into it now as a non-board member than I was as a board member. I reached out to the board, and to be honest with you, they weren't sure. Like these changes of the rules you talked about in the other proposal, they made a change inadvertently, just kind of on a whim, that they were no longer going to give. I signed up to register for the conference, and one of the benefits, if you're a Lifetime Achievement Award, is you get a registration waive. And they said, oh, you don't have, we're not giving those out anymore. And I go, well, that's part of something I earned at the time they gave the award. I go, you can't just willy-nilly stop giving me what I earned as a lifetime achievement. Now, if you want to go forward with the new rule, which I don't think they should do, I think anybody gets a lifetime, we should want them to come to the conference. If they're going to pay their own way, I know Mark Stallo, we did it down near Dallas, and he should have been celebrated. But if we've got lifetime people that will come, if it's in their vicinity or they take it seriously, man, who else should we celebrate? If it's not those two or three people, again, I'm speaking because I'm one of them, but I think I've earned that title given the 35 years. I'm the only person, I've been to whatever it is, 33 out of 34 or 34 out of 35 conferences. I think I've got a little knowledge. I know the history, and I have no problem obviously speaking up. And I would tell you, if Dale Harris hasn't gotten one yet, in light of what he did for the association and his company, that he's been very instrumental, he used to give us an award, someone needs to nominate him before he dies, for God's sakes, as a lifetime award winner. He deserves it. and I'll go public here on your podcast today that I will nominate him. I hope I can get a second somewhere along the line. And there are other people that have done that kind of, those kinds of achievements.
Yeah.
So
Let's just find a way to recognize them, come up with a process, come up with the benefits. It's just, I think, something that needs to be established.
I'm glad you brought it up because I have to say, as like, I know I'm not that young, but like the younger member, I always
you're a lot younger than us.
Millennial
Just
Mindy.
rub it in, Mindy. It's okay. Give us a hard time.
I guess I'm just like super ignorant. I honestly thought you guys just got it automatically. I'm so sorry. Like you're telling me like Dale Harris and like all you guys don't just get it like after like 30 something years of country. I don't know. I don't know why I just thought it was automatic. Like
my knowledge is it comes from the president, and I don't think it should come just from the. We already have a president's award, right? That's very different. There ought to be some criteria or a group that looks for when you meet certain thresholds. Jason, you guys did the podcast on the Mount Rushmore kind of deal. Those would be the kind of people you would at least consider. Chris Bruce is still pretty young. He's a professor. He's done enough in his career already that eventually he'll get into the Hall of Fame, whatever that is. Susan Warnicki, even the controversy around some of that, did so much for this organization. At some point in her career, she deserves very serious consideration for that. There aren't that many, right? And again, if you give me a free registration, and I'm not asking you to pay my way, I'm paying my own way this year. I'm on 2 panels. I got selected, and I gave the discounts to my counter participants because I'm already getting my registration covered. And as a mentor, as a Lifetime Achievement Award mentor, I'm still looking for people to bring to the table. Brand new analyst out of Tempe, Arizona is coming with me to do a presentation, and it's an opportunity where she might not have been able to come. It might be her first conference, but somebody that's been to 35 years doing this, to reach out to someone who's only been a 1 or 2 year member, that's the kind of things these kind of members have really continued to move this organization and the profession forward. And there's a few more that are like that. Certainly Stephen Gottlieb, highly recognized person. He did crime analysis before the IACA even started. He was doing it in California, and that's how I was trained under his tutelage. He's really the grandfather of crime analysis, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he pushed it and made it happen with what they did in California in the 90s is really when a lot of that started.
All right, so those are the 9 motions. What you, the listener, can do is a couple of things. First off, vote. As I mentioned, it's May 19th through May 26th. Log on, find where to vote, and vote. There'll be links in this episode to show you where you can vote. 2, forward this, post this, email this out, whatever it is, get the word out to those that you know that are IACA members and may not have heard about this. Push this out as much as possible, repost. That's what you can do to get the word out about these innovative ideas and this process of voting. Let's get the most voters we've ever had with the IACA. Let's try to get to that 700 plus threshold that they're talking 735 threshold. And so you can help out by, number 1, voting yourself, and number 2, reaching out to others. So again, all the information is going to be the website, leapodcasts.com, with links to additional information. You're not sure exactly how the ballot's going to look, but we will have timestamps on each proposal so you can hop around on the website to listen to particular sections.
Jason, a question of what's your thoughts about this, and I don't know. The way I'm reading this is it takes 735 people to vote in favor of it. So another group of people can vote negative or thumb down, which means we're going to have 1,470 people, if it was a close vote, to get to the 735 threshold.
Yeah, you need 735 votes in favor. So whether it's exactly 735 members voted and they all voted yes, or if 736 voted and only 1 voted no, whatever that is, you need 735 in favor. Thanks for the clarification.
It could be at the end of this that the only people that vote are those who vote in favor. So there's no negative vote, but theoretically people could vote it down.
Yeah.
So, but that's that threshold number, I guess. And again, some clarification needs to be around that. So.
Yeah, but take a look. You listen to this podcast, review all the proposals, because there is more detail in each one of these proposals. We just gave a summary and an overview, but take the time to read and make the vote and reach out to others. Noah, I'm going to give the ladies the last word. So Noah, you go first, and then we'll have Deb go, and then we'll have Mindy go. So Noah, what do you got for me?
All I got is thanks for the opportunity. I hope if there's nothing else that through my energy and commitment to this organization, the message I really want to send to every single member is to step up, to be an active member and be a lifetime member for the betterment of what it is that we do.
Excellent. All right, Deb.
My last words will be similar to my first words, that I am very, very grateful that there is an IACA. It has been a huge influence on my career and continues to be an influence on my career. And I continue to regularly learn about knowledge and skills that people who I have known as part of the association for a long time, but wasn't always aware of all that they do in their jobs and in their lives. And just that, I think, as a professional association is so valuable. And I think that new analysts, or not quite new, but perhaps newish analysts, should really look at that as a professional opportunity and do everything they can to become a part of that. And I think, like any institution, as you've mentioned, it's grown a lot over the years. It needs constant shaking up and looking at ways in which we can be the best association that we can be. And I think that the whole innovative ideas concept is a good way to start that ball rolling. And I think we need to find ways to get more and more and more analysts and other members involved in the process to contribute new ideas and strive to work within our membership to make it better and better for everyone. I think that's the goal. And just like myself, I don't think everybody has to agree with every innovative idea, but I think within the ideas that have been presented, there is meaty stuff there that everyone should find elements in there that they agree with, or elements in there that they'd like to expand upon or learn more about. So I think this is a really good process to get going. And I think this is information that needs to be pushed out to people repeatedly to the point of annoying the membership, because we can't expect that our busy members are going to go seek to participate. It needs to be put in front of them so they can look at it, think about it, then get back to it and give their feedback, and ultimately, if there's a vote, to give their vote. And we need to do more of that with everything, I think.
All right, Mindy, finish us up.
It's a lot of pressure. I guess just piggybacking on what Noah said, I mean, like, I hope that we get a lot more engagement. I hope that we reach that 735 threshold. But even if we only get like half of it, I'll still be happy that like somebody stepped up or somebody got engaged. And which, despite how this may or may not go, I just hope more people get engaged or interested and step up in the future. So I hope this is the first step, not the final one. So thank you, everyone.
All right. Very good. Thank you for joining us. Again, check the show notes for the link, vote, reach out to others, innovative ideas for the IACA. If you have any questions or concerns about this podcast or any of the information we've gone over, you can always email us at leapodcasts@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You all be safe, and until next time.
Thank you for making it to the end of another episode of Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. You can show your support by sharing this and other episodes found on our website at www.leapodcasts.com. If you have a topic you would like us to cover or have a suggestion for our next guest, please send us an email at leapodcasts@gmail.com. Till next time, analysts, keep talking.